All right, world. I'm told, according to the internet, that we are live on YouTube.
Mm.
It's nice to see you all. We are back for one of, I believe, there's one more episode that's going to occur between now and the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. That sounds right to everybody. And you'll notice that I'm not in my normal location. I hail today from Memphis, Tennessee, where we're going to be spending our holiday this year with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and his twin brother and their family. So I think there's 13 people here, and half of those are kids under
Holy.
4. So it's going to be
Oh boy.
wild. But
I
so
hope you
you
brought earplugs.
Oh, I have in these headphones. We'll see how that goes. But if you hear any screaming kids, that's exactly what it is. So it's exactly what it sounds like. So glad to be here.
Oh.
And today's topic, if you looked at the thumbnail, you may not be surprised to learn that it is about our favorite pedals of 2025. And we are in unique positions, I would say, to do this between the three of us and our shared experience. I, as a pedal manufacturer, and Grant, as a pedal manufacturer, I, as a retired pedalboard builder, Grant is an active pedalboard builder, and Brian is an active pedalboard builder. We see a tremendous amount. I'm going to say in the thousands of pedals every single year, and we get to have a lot of experiences with those pedals. And so,
Hmm.
although pedal reviews can be great, and although there are some great voices out there in the community, many of them do not reflect the experience that is shared within this digital room that we find ourselves in. So I think that our
Mm.
commentary is worth being heated. Maybe is not the truth, but is definitely a consideration. I'm anxious to hear about your favorite pedals. I know which ones I really like and gravitate towards. But let's celebrate the people that did great work this year and talk about them. And as we continue our list, I'll make sure that each of these get added to the description if these are pedals that you might consider or you want to check out or learn more. And that way you can find those people. And some of our sponsors even carry some of these pedals, which are great. So in the case that they are carried by our sponsors, I'll also make sure that those links are heading to our friends at the Guitar Sanctuary. So, without further
Yeah.
ado, Brian and Grant, what are your feelings on this year's pedals? How did we do as an industry? And just kind of without naming any names yet, what were sort of your overarching feelings about some of the releases? Did you feel like it was a really strong release year? Did you feel it was more moderate? Did you feel like there were some things that were really standouts before we, just kind of calibrating the audience, let's say, to what we might be thinking?
If you don't mind, Brian, I'll
Yeah.
keep
Go
this
for
brief. But in preparing for this, as we were chatting, I knew I would forget something. I knew I would forget a great pedal that has been released, and so I tried searching around, like what came out this year, what came out in 2024. But the year went so quick, it feels like it was stuff. There has been so much gear released this year, and I don't think it's abnormal from other years necessarily, but I think I realize how little I actually have a grasp on what's been released and what's good and what maybe missed the mark a little bit, just because I there is so much gear that has come out. And so I have my little corner of the industry opinion, but I would truly love to hear what people enjoyed in the comments here, because there's just no way, even with talking to people about their rigs every week, building rigs throughout the whole year, I feel like I've only seen 2% of it. And so I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say, what the guys in the chat have to say. I'm already seeing some suggestions here from ones that are on my list. But yeah, I don't know. That's me not giving anything away, but I do feel like my opinion is only a small portion of what actually came out, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what we chat about. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I think I think there are some good ones. I think there are not like swing and a miss, but I definitely think there are some like late to the game pedals that came out, as well as some pedals a lot of people were expecting to see, and we didn't even see hint any more Strymon MX pedals. I'm just throwing that out there. There's a couple people with recent releases that are like, that doesn't look like a MX timeline or something. So I definitely think there are some good ones. I have a couple of these that are on the list. I've had a couple of these, so I definitely think from our list that we've talked, there are some good ones. I'm curious if there's any not on our list that have come out that other people have seen, um, that we just haven't talked about. But yeah, I'd say it was a good year. I am interested in what 2026 has to offer. I've heard some teasing details from some companies, so they're saying it could be a good new year.
Can I mention this early, just in case people are watching this as we go? I want to see the comments here, but one that I have not had the experience with, but they've come out with some good, what looks to be good gear, but I haven't had hands-on experience. Is the guys at Old Blood Noise? There's a
Mm-hmm.
couple releases as I was searching. I was like, oh, I wish I would have gotten to play those. And so, if anyone's tried any of the new Old Blood Noise stuff, any of it, I would love to hear about it in the chat as well, because that's a company I really like, but I haven't gotten to try any of their new stuff this year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Well, I think that maybe this is a good time, now that we've sort of set the stage for the audience, is to go into maybe what we consider, this doesn't mean it's the only good one, but what we consider to be our favorite of this year as far as pedals. And this doesn't mean, again, that there can't be more, but there's always one that seems to rise to the top. Maybe you have a 2 or 3-way tie. If that's the case, we'll be gracious and allow you to name those. But I think invariably there's always one that stands out. So I'm going to ask you to attempt to restrict your favorite pick to one, and then maybe we can start going through some of the other ones that we also really like, honorable mentions, things of that nature. How does that feel?
Beauty.
Good with me. I
Okay.
like that.
Who would like to offer theirs first?
Come on, Brian. Give us
Um,
Omilion pedals to consider from 2025.
um, I mean, I've got to say, I was really impressed, and I tried this one out, and actually at the Guitar Sanctuary. It's the Tone King Imperial preamp. I was really surprised by it. I think the overall size of it, I was like, oh, okay, it's the size of a timeline. But I was like, wasn't convinced seeing some videos, and then they were playing it when I got to the shop one day, and I was like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Here, come play it." And I was playing on, and then they showed me. I was like, "Oh shoot, that's actually sounds real." So I have yet to have one come through on the board. I think it has a lot to do with the size of the unit. It's a little bit big for an amp sim, like amp tone,
But
like
it's
simulator pedal or
analog. It's
whatever.
analog. So I think in
But it's
there, yeah,
analog.
in tube.
Yeah.
So I think that, you got to take the good with the bad on that one.
For sure. And I think that's where it is. I think it's a really great pedal. I think that's the one thing about why I haven't seen it on a board is the size. But I think I've seen more people go, "Oh, I'm just going to set this on a powered speaker behind me, or I'm going to set it back here or like off the board, that kind of stuff."
Right.
So, this 2025 has been a lot of people doing these like mini sideboards, like two Tone X's in a direct box, or any of these, like all these little
Mm.
sideboards for their amp sim stuff. So I think that's where a lot of them could come into place, and the fact that they can, you could connect it to a computer, update it. I can't remember if it has MIDI or not. That shows how far I've driven into it, but like I think it's a really cool, like really good sounding analog pedal, and it's really like it's basic. There's not any complicated sub menus to go into. There's not a screen. Like it's just really, really basic. And I thought it sounded great. I was able to get some really good tones pretty quickly off of it.
Mm. As God
I
intended.
think the thing I love about that one as well, because I've gotten a quite a bit of time on the Tone King,
Okay,
and
good.
have to admit, loved it. Like that's
Yeah.
top of my list. I was going to save my number one for later, but since we're talking about it now, the thing that has come up with the Tone King though on a few board builds, which I love, is that it's like a lot of amp sims, you can kind of split it up into sections. So you have a preamp section, a power amp section. It has a built-in effects loop for pedals, but also a built-in effects loop for another amplifier or another amp sim, and you can bypass it, and you can insert your amps, like your real tube amps preamp, into the power amp of the Tone King with a hit of a button and then go back to the Tone King again. So you have all these different channel combinations and they sound awesome. Like
Yeah.
I would say the Tone King is probably my favorite release of
Mm.
2025, which is probably no surprise. We've talked about it a few times on the podcast, but it just feels awesome. I've played with it in a live setting, in more of a just mess around at home setting, and I think those two settings are very important for an amp sim to get a feel of it with a band and a feel of it, at home with your rig. So I have a bit of a pedal crush on the Tone King Imperial for sure. So I'll throw it back to you, Brian, because I'm interrupting your list, but
No, no, no.
that was high on my list for
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah. I mean, are we just doing one, or
Yeah,
do
let's
we
stick
want to
let's
do a
stick with
couple?
one now, and then we can start to fill in with some of the
Yeah.
other honorable mentions. If you're done, Grant, you can follow it up. If yeah, hopefully he didn't take yours, or at least
No, he
No.
get.
definitely did. He absolutely. I instantly regretted throwing to Brian first because like, he took my number one.
Well, and that
So
doesn't mean that you have to
that's
pivot. So it could be that yours is also that's also your number one. We don't have to pivot for that.
that's my number one
Yeah.
for 2025. Absolutely my number one.
Anything to
Yeah.
add that you haven't already said about it?
I just love the flexibility. I feel like what we've talked about in the past, what makes a pedal stick, like last over years, and what
Mhm.
makes a pedal more of a flash in the pan. It gets released and then people forget about it. The Tone King is just well thought out, and they've covered a lot of bases for what the people actually using it might ask for or
Mm,
have asked
Mhm.
for, and they put it into the feature set.
mm,
So I think it's a well thought out pedal. It is big, but I think for what you get in replacing an amplifier and doing a great job replacing an amplifier, I have no complaints on the size when you take that
absolutely.
into consideration. And even in studio, being able to get quick takes with an amp, a tube amp that you love, but
Mm.
silently, like it just, I just love it. I'm gonna just start blushing here in a second, so I'll stop talking about it. But I just think it sounds great. It feels great. Great price point for what it is. Great feature set. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's way up there.
It is really beautiful, beautifully done, and I think that they took a lot of the information. A lot of people may know this already, but Tone King used to belong to a guy named Mark Bartel. He now has an amplifier company called Bartel Amps, and it was sold to a company called the Premier Builders Guild, and then when the dissolution of that was then purchased by another sort of consortium of ownership of multiple companies. They do Friedman, Morgan, Wampler, Tone King, among others, called Boutique Amp Distribution, also abbreviated as BAD, uh, as you would know from the initials.
Shout out to Michael Jackson.
Not anything to do with his album. Although maybe they have a leather jacket and a sequin glove. You never know when they build. Um, but in any case, they've had a lot of experience with this because Friedman did a similar style of kind of pedal based preamp, digital power amp, stereo effects loop things with the BEIR, and then there was also another one I think for Jakey
The
Lee.
IRX, is that one of them?
Yes, yeah. So all those Friedman ones. So I think that they kind of developed a really good ecosystem for that to exist, and then are kind of able to use that as a standard as they sort of expand. I'm assuming that at some point, I don't think it's done already, but I would assume at some point they're going to have a Soldano one, and
Nice.
it would be, I would assume, very cool. I think there's also right for a Morgan one. I don't think there's anything kind of boxy that could be very cool for Joe Morgan to kind of come in and take that space. And so I really like the format. I think it's really smart. I think it sounds really good, and it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You have analog, you have
Yeah.
digital, and I think it's really a really great pedal. Now, my pick, interestingly, we're kind of both choosing sort of amplifier related pedals. Mine is actually the Rockman. I think that is the coolest pedal, in
Okay.
my opinion, that came out this year. And if you're not familiar with the Rockman, it was MXR's recreation as Rockman because they bought the rights to it some time ago and re-released a pedal-based version of the Rockman module. I think it's called the X100,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah, that's one.
Yeah, and it is not exactly the same in terms of features of the original Rockman because I've had those, but it is identical in sound. It is analog, and it's this recreation of this really brilliant design by Tom Schultz, and it's pedal based and it can be run in stereo, and it's been used on all sorts of records from um, Brian Adams and Summer of '69, and it's been
Yeah.
used on Def Leppard records. It's been used on just countless things in the '80s, and has really been a staple of a lot of '80s guitar tones. Mutt Lange famously loved it, which is part of the reason why it was so prominently used on Def Leppard. Just really cool pedal. It's really cool that they were able to take this and make it smaller, make it adaptable to today's guitar players. I wish that it got a little bit more love than it did. It had a good, nice launch, I thought, but I thought that maybe they missed the mark at sort of showing its roots and origins more and sort of how that can apply to today's music. Because I think today's music actually, especially in pop, really works well with this type of effect. And the sounds that it does, I think very much now that things have kind of gone more DI than in previous years, this
Yeah.
particular effect to me really works for some of the trends that we're seeing. So I really love that effect. I think it's really cool. I think it's really amazing that MXR did it, and that's my pick.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Very cool. And
yeah,
this
I
is
like that.
the X100 you mentioned, which has two sliders, a couple of push buttons.
yeah, yeah,
That one, right?
yep,
Like a 5090B size. Yeah.
yep.
Very
Yep,
cool.
yep. The Rockman is my favorite. It's really, really cool, and if you know those sounds, it's indistinguishable from the original, and I think sounds really, really good. So I
And
think
so
of
you were saying like this is more of a direct sound. So you could go into this at the end of your chain as an example and go straight into your DAW.
yeah, and the original one had kind of everything, and this one's a little bit more abbreviated. But the original one, you had echo, you had chorus, you had echo and chorus, you had compression, you had an overdrive channel. Like the intro to like Danger Zone, for example, Kenny Loggins, Rockman. It's like a signature sound that also
Hmm.
like on Yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart, all that stuff. That's all Rockman, except for the solo. I think is an H3000 for the harmonized thing, but everything else is Rockman. So it's
Very
just been
cool.
used on so many hit records, and it was really cool that they brought it back in that format. So I thought that was a really cool release from my perspective. But those aren't the only cool releases, which I think is now maybe
Mhm.
where we get into another category before we maybe get into honorable mentions. I'm curious if you guys have an opinion on who had like the best marketing campaign in the launch, given that we are all sort of consumers and manufacturers in this space. Who do you think did the best release of any product in 2026 in the pedal world?
Oh, hands
Ooh.
down, Chase Bliss. Hands down. Have you seen their Hero Brothers AM documentary? That, like, the whole thing was. I remember when it was coming out. I was talking to Joel about it a couple days prior. I was like, "Hey, I heard a rumor that this is coming out," and he sent me the link, and I was like, "Wait, you flew all the way to this other country and documented finding all these different resistors and going to Analog Man?" And he's like, "Yeah, like we put a lot of work into this one." I was like, "Hats off to you guys. Like that's not cheap." I mean, I've never flown people out for a video shoot, but obviously, Mason, you have, so you understand the cost it is to not only fly you and multiple people somewhere and staying and content filming and going and editing, and like there's just so much involved. I mean, there are other companies like, I know Morningstar is another company that is really good with like their marketing for a lot of their stuff, like their the NCA Pro that they released this year. Like I would say those two companies have always knocked out of the park. Strymons is pretty much what you expect. It's an Apple commercial, but Chase Bliss definitely really good job. And I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say Maris too, but a lot of times it's just like ceilings of cathedrals and like ceilings of just like random stuff, like to kind of tease what they're doing. But yeah, Chase Bliss, I feel like really like made you love the pedal um before you even like knew what it was or bought it, because you got to see the behind, behind the scenes of it. So that's my pick. I would say they definitely killed it.
which is brilliant as well as far as
Yeah.
the documentary, which I forgot about, but I did watch that when it came out, and I know that I am not a King of Tone fan for my own board. When other people
Same.
use it, sounds great. I have nothing against the pedal, but I don't connect with it. But watching the documentary, I'm like, well, maybe I could connect with it. Like maybe I could get on board after seeing the behind the scenes, the marketing aspect, the effort that went into building and creating this pedal. I it made me second guess a long held opinion that I've tried
Yeah.
to break many times. And I just think it's so brilliant because you connect with the pedal, the people behind it, the story, and you want to be part of it. And so yeah, that launch, that documentary would have been tens and tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, to create. But I feel like at least from the consumer aspect, I don't know the numbers on their sales, but I feel like it was well worth it and gave you a story to buy into and a story to tell someone else, tell your friends. So
Yeah.
I think, and I'm like Maris does a great job. Neural does a great job on launches,
Yeah.
Strime and all that, but they are more in the editing suite. They do a great job. But Chase Bliss does a great job of telling a story for you to buy into and
Mm-hmm.
bringing you to the location of which this is a now going to be more and more rare with AI and all this like B-roll that you can just create with a prompt.
Yeah.
But Chase Bliss it allows you to connect with it in a way that you couldn't
Yeah.
otherwise, in my opinion. So I would agree on the
It's
Chase
kind of
Bliss
like
thing.
JHS is like that
Yeah,
too. Like the history that they do behind a lot of that stuff makes you love it before you like I hundreds of podcasts. I watch documentaries. That's just the stuff that I listen to while I'm working, or like I don't really get into too many TV shows. I started getting like I've grown up with sports, but being from Detroit, I grew up with hockey, so I love hockey. And moving to Dallas, I'm not as big of a football fan. I like football because I'm competitive, but I'm not a huge football fan. But watching like football documentaries made me enjoy and love the sport more because I had better backstory. So I think that kind of stuff is like that kind of stuff just like it's like they're hooking you in, and then you get it and you're just like, oh man, it's even better.
Mm.
What about you, Mason? Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you didn't. You didn't. I would agree. I think that the one that sticks out to me most is Chase Bliss, and I think that what separated him, and I know some other people in the comment mentioned Josh Scott, they mentioned Healy, and I think that
Oh,
they equally did very, very good jobs this year. But I think that from a storytelling perspective, in sort of the timeline that was on, like that was like a multi-year storytelling
yeah.
process where there had to be events in Japan. There had to be events in Connecticut with Analog Man. There had to be things back
Mhm.
in Minneapolis with the Chase Bliss team. And sort of the arc that took in the documentation that needed to happen in sort of storyboarding. And there's a certain amount of, I don't know how much creative control is in Joel's hands versus whoever is kind of their video editor, director, social media person, but however they decided to sort of divide that up and how to organize the story was incredibly compelling. And he is, even as somebody who has an immense appreciation for what Joel does, but no desire to use the pedals because of just the complexity um, and I have a King of Tone already. I it was probably as close as I ever have gotten to buying one of those pedals sight unseen,
Yeah, yeah.
because I thought it was such a compelling story. And as somebody mentioned it in the return of TC, it's very true that in a lot of cases you're buying a story or a narrative. In what it is it's sort of relationship. You create relationship with your viewers, if they feel like you're the sort of storyteller or the teacher that they really want to put their money behind, because their money
Yeah.
is sort of a validation that you sort of see things the way that they do, and they're likely to enjoy your product if they feel like there's a connection there. And I think that
Yeah.
Chase Bliss did an incredible job of creating a connection in the 30 minutes or so of the video, and I thought they did an amazing job. I think equally, I think Josh has done a great job. I think he's been more consistent at doing this. I think that, not that Chase Bliss has ever done poor marketing. I don't think that at all. But I thought that it was really, um, really spectacular what they did this year with that product. And I think that that stood out to me. That I think makes it more noteworthy than other players who have sort of consistently maybe done this style marketing. I thought that they were really, really outstanding. And I think the Keeley too. I don't know again how much creative control Robert Keeley has, but whoever is behind some of the videos, and I think it is the guy that sort of acts as co-host in some of these. I think that they've been doing a really good job of like the 2-in-1 pedals, the latest reverb
Mhm.
pedal with Andy Timmons. Um, I think that it
Yeah.
is really cool how I think that their best marketing campaign, if I were to, I know this didn't happen this year, but it sort of piggybacks on kind of the stylistic elements they've been doing now. But the smartest thing that they did in that Noble Screamer release is to just get the right players in the room. It doesn't even necessarily
Oh yeah.
require their endorsement, but the fact that you have the Nobles players in Nashville creating any alignment or association, even if they never use the pedal again, the optics of that are you've got the co-signing of a Tom Bukovac, or you've got the co-signing
Mhm.
of whatever Nashville session player who is renowned at using this specific product, and getting those guys in the room, that has as much impact as them using the pedal on their pedal boards, in my opinion. Again, from the optics.
Yeah.
Um, I think that they've sort of built on that. The caution that I would have to Keeley, though, is, and this isn't a slide on Keeley or Andy Timmons, I think sometimes when you get too hyper focused on one artist, then it can also be alienating. And so sometimes if you've got a signature pedal for everything, from overdrives to reverbs to delays, and then multiple delays now, um, it can make it seem like you're sort of dealing in just one territory. But I'm sure that they're aware of that, and I'm sure that they have good reasons for doing what they're doing. Just to sort of putting on my consumer hat,
Yeah.
there can be some fatigue. What about you, Grant?
As far as the best launches and
Yeah,
thoughts around that,
yeah,
I think another one that got my attention with the hook, which has been a long tail release. I think it finally came out this year as a Cornerstone Nucleo,
mm,
with that being inside the bunker, like a nuclear
right,
bunker.
right.
Like what
Nice.
a hook, like there's nothing better than that. And that's another on location shot. I know people in the chat have been mentioning the Nucleo as well. I have to be totally transparent. I have not tried it,
Mhm.
but I think reverb is one of those pedals where you can see a YouTube video and get a pretty good feel if it's going to work for you or not. Whereas an overdrive, I'd say you probably more so need to try that in your rig. I think the Nucleo, with guitar players, myself being one, buying with their eyes first. I have bought that pedal a million times over. That pedal is it is beautifully designed, a great marketing campaign. I think they sold out instantly on that thing because it did take a long time to come out. Um, and yeah, I think that thing is pretty incredible on the marketing side of things, and I have no doubt I'll have one in the future. Um, I just think it's even like I was looking at it in detail down to the beveled washers on the jacks are custom made. Every detail on it, how the hole drilled and tapered, everything has been looked at. You can tell it's done by an Italian designer, as far as Cornerstone being an Italian company.
Yeah, he's the
Yeah, very
Pininfarina
I have a
incredible.
of guitar
question.
pedals.
Yeah,
I have
it's impressive.
I'm looking at it. I have a picture. Like I have yet to play it either. Maybe the Sanctuary has it. I've been swamped with the new baby and getting end of the year builds in that I haven't been over there to see. I know they carry a bunch of cornerstone stuff, but so correct me if I'm wrong. Are these sliders and it's a turning knob? Because the knobs are round, they're not square.
I think it's just sliders. I could be wrong though. I could be.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I could
I
be
was gonna
wrong.
say that's impressive if it slides can if it does like both functions. I'm like I had never seen that before.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
They do some
that's
very
crazy.
beautiful gear.
Yeah,
And
I
Paul
will say though,
David is the kind of spokesperson for this one, is the artist collab.
I like it. It's a cool. I have two things. One, I was hooked with JHS marketing once he hosted that like figure skating of the pedals video. Like after that, I was like, this is cinema. um, but
Uh,
that hooked me, and then I was at Andy's a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the reverb pedal coming out, and he kept going. He goes, I just want to like emphasize like this is like the reverb side of the Halo in like this new enclosure that they were talking about, and like he was showing me some of the little features that it could do and stuff. But I think what you were saying, Mason, about like them not Keeley, in a sense, not putting all their eggs in one basket of like this one artist. I think cool to see if they do a signature pedal like this, say with Andy, not to do 10 videos showing off the reverb pedal from just Andy. It needs a couple with Andy, but then it should maybe be a couple other musicians, like even like a worship player or a blues player, like all these different genres. Because if you, it's kind of like Neural will release a new archetype, obviously, except the John Mayer one is different, or the Corey Wong one, but like a lot of times, a lot of people that I've talked to, they're like, yeah, I didn't go the Neural because it seems so like heavy metal, like really grungy tones. I'm like, well, no, there are Corey Wong. There's all these different like types of profiles that you can get. I think if some of these companies could cater to all the different genres, not just, hey, this is an exclusive pedal, and only show you of their playing, you're gonna cap your like sellability from people because people are only gonna think
Yeah.
that is able to be sold. Like that's the cool thing with some of these companies. They don't do a signature pedal or they do it or whatever, but like they've had 10 different people try it. So that's the kind of the same thing with the tube screamer thing you were saying. They have all these different people that have tried it. And it's like, wow, okay, it sounds great. No, all these different
Yeah.
circumstances.
Well, I think that one thing that they do well with, I think, the Andy Timmons ones is they don't brand it heavily as Andy Timmons on the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Because one thing that we learned fairly early on is that as great as artist endorsement pedals are, there's always a ceiling that they hit. Because once you've sort of saturated their fan base, it's hard to sort of recreate
Yeah.
the interest, and it's also hard to manage artist expectations. I'm saying that generally because they usually see these huge checks in the first year, because
Oh yeah.
everybody's buying it. And then as they've sort of saturated, then because the royalties are generally based on sales. Maybe some guys
Mm-hmm.
can negotiate guarantees or minimums. We never did that, and to my knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
most companies that I am aware of don't do that. But there's just an invariable sort of drop off that happens after they've kind of saturated the market, and so that can be hard to manage their expectations as well, because I think that the feeling could be, without maybe all of the context of the manufacturer side, that they maybe aren't doing as good of a job at marketing your product or something like that.
Yeah.
um, and so I think that those are just sort of the inherent shortfalls, but it seems like Andy has a great relationship with Keeley. They're on their, what is this, the third signature pedal or fourth signature pedal. They've had two different versions of Halo. They've got the Nocturne, they've got the MK3, which was formerly the Muse. So there's four
The
there.
Muse.
He's had one JHS, and he's had a GNI, and he's had a exotic, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
For signature pedals for Andy.
Yeah.
Um Carl Martin also, he had the compressor.
Compressor, okay, yeah.
Just
So
them.
8. So he's got
There's a lot.
he's having a good run. He's having a good run.
He's
And God bless him.
he's good
He's an
with them.
amazing
Yeah.
player, and I think has some of the best guitar tone of all time. I think
Oh man, yeah,
it's very impressive. Um, Here's another
yeah.
question for you that I want to I want to talk about, which is, who do you think had sort of the biggest breakout year of any of the pedal companies that we know? This may not mean that they had like the best seller or the most impressive release, but who do you think really sort of kind of upped the game this year? But before you answer that, I want to break momentarily to talk about a few of our sponsors that make the podcast possible, one of which are our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas, a suburb of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And they have most of the pedals that we've been talking about so far today, including many others, boutique guitars, boutique amplifiers, and they would love to see you in person or online at theguitarsanctuary.com, where you can peruse their store, you can get help from their expert staff, and I guarantee you're going to find something that you like there. Secondly, I want to talk to you about Neural DSP, and some of you may have seen last week that I was lucky enough to be selected to be involved with the launch of the John Mayer plugin. Got to play with it, a few weeks in advance of its release, and got to have a video that published right at the moment of release, which was really really cool to be a part of that and get a chance to play it. And I have to say, as far as plugins go, as critical as I have been of some of them, I would say that this is the most comprehensive artist plugin I've ever seen in terms of recreating a known signal path from point A to point Z and every single thing in between. You are literally getting a multi-million-dollar rig for the price of admission. And what I mean by that is, obviously, alone, if you were to sort of add up the pieces of the Dumble steel string singer and the provenance of that particular one, the two rock that John Mayer uses, the blackface Fender amplifier, those of course are not worth millions of dollars. But the combination of that, how they're mic'd, the cabinets that are used, the speakers that are used, the processing that it's going into, the signal path and signal chain of all of the miking, what's coming out of your speakers is most certainly worth that. And there are people that would most certainly pay that. And so I think having abilities to recreate that sound is literally the closest that any of us will ever get to playing through John Mayer's rig. And so I think that that is incredibly, incredibly interesting. And I think that Neural DSP, um, not to segue into what we were just talking about, this technically isn't a pedal, but if it were in the plugin world, I would say that they, as much stock as they already had, it just elevated to an order, just an order of magnitude beyond anything that I could have imagined. So congratulations to them. And they offer our listeners 30% off all plugins using the coupon code Chairmen. And in 90 days, this John Mayer plugin will be eligible for that coupon code. But in the meantime, every other plugin that they have on the Neural DSP website is eligible using that code. So highly recommend you check it out. Lastly, our friends over at Bestronix, BTPA, who make all of the pedalboard supplies that all of us use on a regular basis, whether that's cables, 2.1 millimeter barrel ends, quarter-inch ends, whatever it is that you need for your next rig build, it's going to be there. And they're offering our listeners 10% off their entire order by using the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, and use that at checkout and get 10% off your entire order. Which leads us back to my question, which is, which pedal company in 2025 upped their stock, that they had a huge leap in kind of prominence, in kind of making their way, making their name known in the industry? Is there anybody that is standing out to you in that way?
One I was going to say before you even asked the question, in my mind, it was in the category of new pedals. And I think Brian could speak to this better than I could, but I feel like the Nano Cortex has been reinvented this year with its updates and the kind of feature
Oh yeah.
set that it has. I was actually searching through, and someone mentioned in a comment the Nano Cortex is basically a new pedal with all its updates. Like thinking about it, like, really is with the amount of updates that they've done and the feature set that it now has. It's pretty impressive what they've done there. And then I saw them obviously announce the John Mayer collaboration. I knew about it much later than you did, Mason, and I was just I was like, man, that's a good grab for Neural. That's pretty impressive to get like the guitar player as far as where we're currently at. It's pretty impressive. I did come across another company on top of what I just mentioned about Nano through a pedalboard build. A customer said they had a Butterfly Effects Dobo on their board, and so I started looking into Butterfly Effects, and they've got some impressive marketing. The effect itself, it's like a granular type pedal called Dobo, if I'm saying that right. It might be Dabo. I have no idea. But very cool company, and there's some new stuff they've come out with in 2025 that looks interesting. I tried it myself. This is one of those companies, one of many I had never heard of before until a customer said it was on their board, and I had to research it a little bit, and it was pretty impressive. So I really enjoyed going through their gear as well and some of their new releases. What about you, Brian?
I would say, I think this company they've actually released, I want to say 5 or 6 different things this year, and they've done pedals, but they've also done a bunch of utility stuff. I think Walrus Audio is one to mention too,
Mm,
because they have.
that's
I
what I was
mean,
going to say.
they came out with that. Yeah, man, they did their Black Friday series, the Harvest series, which I have 2 of them, and they have their MIDI clock, their different DIs, as well as their power supplies. The littlest.
Canvas,
There's a
yeah.
couple of them I don't
The
have. Yeah,
HP.
so like, yeah, so I have a couple of them here. Like I have a couple of them, but like this is the Power 8.
Brian
They have
keeps
the
them on his
HP and the
person.
HP Plus. I
At all
do.
times.
Okay, you
Yeah,
never
I
know.
do.
9-volt battery goes down. Brian's right there with the Canvas
Well, I'm
HP.
sitting at dinner. Just pull it out. It's just ready to go. But like the HP as we're talking. Yeah. So like the HP Plus, and I have a quad cortex board behind me that the guy's running a Lely Expression, a Canvas tuner, um, and a quad cortex, and it just didn't have enough space for like a our favorite DC7. So like it was just like there wasn't enough space on the board because he also had this power the Seymour Duncan power amp. So he had the Canvas HP, which is nice and small, worked out great. I think for like those types of things, like they've released a lot of that stuff and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, I love how small this is." Like it's tiny. But then you run into like having to have the brick for the
Roughly the same
IEC,
size and
which is
taller.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like when you're so excited and then you get this and now you have like these 2 things,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it will deter people. And that was one thing I was talking to one of their guys, Jason, about, is just like
That would
having
be
like
an easy
this
solution. They
like
could fix that problem.
yeah,
They could redesign that.
yeah,
I believe they could.
okay,
Um, I believe that they could. I'm not saying that they're going to, but I believe because they wouldn't need to change anything about their power supplies that already shipped, right? They could create a lower profile. Like the IEC dictates the height, right? That jack. But the
yeah,
housing could be slightly slimmer. And I think you've even seen, I don't remember if this was, I guess early chalks had more of the clover shaped 3-prong that you would
Mickey
oh
see.
Mouse.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Mickey, yeah,
And that lowers the profile, but they may
yeah,
not want to go with the non-standard connection, and so there are trade-offs obviously in doing this, but I think that if they decided to go with the brick, that would be a brick that was it's the same profile, that would be huge, huge for them.
yeah,
They could
yeah.
even go with the power con potentially, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for the brick. That could be another
I
option
Yeah.
that
think
they could go to.
I think hitting that like 1 inch height, if you can do a power supply, every component is 1 inch or less in height, then it opens you up to a whole bunch of pedal boards that it can be quite frustrating to use a
Yeah,
canvas supply for.
yeah.
and I think that's where it would be. Yeah, it would be pretty cool to see that,
Game
like
changer for
a
sure.
Mark II or something. Yeah, something to get us below that 1 inch height. But I assume with manufacturing, mold fees, redesigning, they would have to get a bespoke thing done that probably costs a lot of money up front, and maybe their customers aren't complaining that much about it. I have no idea, but I know from the building side, it's a frustrating piece to that power supply.
Yep. What about no, please, Brian. More to say?
No, I was just gonna comment out because I was talking with Jason, one of the guys over there, and he was saying that was the one thing they've always had people come back and they're like, oh, I would love it to be inside the unit. He's like, well, if it's inside the unit, it makes it taller. There's all these different things that come into play. I think that's the one convenient thing. It's convenient with the brick because if I need the cable, if you have the capacity to do this, I buy the connectors from Grant, the EIAJ little barrel connectors. He has the right angles and the straight ones, and I'll shorten the cable between the units if I have to. I think sometimes you just have to get creative with them, but their overall release of a bunch of their stuff has been really good. I will say they also do really good in marketing their pedals coming out because they'll actually sometimes bring a whole band in. Like they brought the guys with the Devil Wears Prada in to demo one of their pedals.
They brought in Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci's back there slapping the bass.
Anne Hathaway, she shreds. But they bring in all these different bands, and I think that's a really cool way to be relevant with different genres. Is you don't just get one person, you get the whole band. You get them all in.
High barrier to entry though. Recording a full band, the gear that you need to pull that off well.
Well, and they walk in me, I have a little X32 rack that I use. If you think about it, you set them up in a garage all running into an X32. You provide all the pedals and the amp sims. They're literally just walking in, putting on in-ears and their guitars, and they're playing. It's a really smart idea.
Totally.
To do that. And it's kind of like the JHS show where they already have the drum set all set up and they're come in and play. I can't imagine how echoey it is in that garage that they do a lot of their warehouse.
All those
videos.
Pedals are probably good sound diffusers, right? That's a good reason to buy them.
Totally.
I just need to
don't you? I wonder how much of it is mic though. I guess you do see mics on the amps. I was just wondering, are they? It would be easier if they used load boxes.
They did a thing a while back where they showed the setup and it was all Kemper.
So that was the JHS stuff.
They had a visual of the real amp, and then they were doing Kempers, which makes total sense in that environment. I do not I don't look down on them at all for doing that, because the reality is it's a small room and you want to use tube amps with live drum mics, with vocal mics. It's just the smart thing to do is to go into an amp sim or that type of silent stage.
So Josh Scott, when I was at the Sanctuary, he had came in for something. He was doing an event at the Sanctuary, and I was elected to take him back to his hotel place, wherever he was staying or whatever. I had to drop him off, and we were driving. And we were talking about something, and I was like, "Man, I just love the JHS show you're doing." And he just happens to go. He goes, "Does this sound good?" I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Yeah, those are Kempers," and I was like, "What do you mean they're Kempers?"
Get out of the car.
He's like, "We're always using Kempers." I'm like, "But you see your little JHS amp up there?" He goes, "Yeah, I mean, you see it and you see the light is on. That doesn't mean that that's where we're going through." I was like, "How long have you been doing this?" And he's like, "A couple years." So when the topic kind of got started when I was talking about Andy coming on their show, and I was like, "That's really cool that Andy's going to bring a Mason." He goes, "No, he's actually using messing with a Kemper right now." I was like, "Why would he be messing with a Kemper?" And then that's how that whole conversation got started. And that makes sense. That direct route makes sense. I knew the moment I heard an interview where John Mayer said that he did some radio thing and he didn't have anything but his computer and he was playing. I immediately think I texted you guys. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's coming out with a plug-in. And Mason, you had said something. You're like, oh yeah, obviously you had already shot the video and it was 5 days away from it, but it was just it only makes sense to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I had to lop that on about Walrus. They're really good with their marketing stuff. I think a lot of their stuff that they've come out with, little utility boxes that people don't think about. That's why some
Mhm.
companies I've told in the past, I'm like, you need to like, you know, you, you need to start doing more utility stuff because right now we are so gear overloaded. Reverbs, delays. We're getting layers of the reverbs of different releases coming out, but like we're not getting enough like different utility boxes to handle all of your USB-C, connectors, all your different HX1s and your HX stomps and your tone X's and your RGM. They're like that kind of stuff. So I've been pitching that kind of stuff, but yeah, I think they did a really well job with the utility stuff this year.
I think my only point with all of this, I totally agree that they do a good job, but I'm also thinking as a smaller company, the ability to do that is it's a high bar for entry to, and I feel, I don't know if you guys would feel similar, but I almost feel like as the owner of Goodwood, almost like my first priority needs to shift towards creating great content that relates to a product. Whereas in the past, it was I have a product and now I need to tell people about it. You almost need to switch into like a media company type thing that also happens to make guitar pedals. And I don't think it's that
Yeah.
extreme yet, but that's what it feels like sometimes as the owner is like I gotta put in so much effort
Mm-hmm.
onto the release content and onto
Mhm.
telling people
Mhm.
about it and how creative ways and who will I get involved. And now the product is almost the easy part and the launch is the hard part. And I mean, I'm working on something now and I've spent the last 3 months just on launch content. And it's for someone that doesn't know what they're doing, admittedly, that's overwhelming. And so I do think I see someone like Walrus. They have a space dedicated to have a band in. They have the lighting. They have the multiple cameras and angles and people operating them. The editing suite. All this. It's a big operation to launch a product like that. And I think they do an awesome job. JHS does an awesome job, but it's not something that you can easily replicate as a new company. It's going to take time to get there, is all
Yeah.
I'm saying, and time and money and skill, which yeah, it's great as the consumer, hard to replicate as the manufacturer.
I'm in
Yeah.
I'm in complete agreement with. I was just looking up some to make sure that I had the right dates on certain things here because I would only want to speak intelligently about the actual products that we have in question here.
Yeah.
Um, I think that Walrus was going to be my choice as well, and the reason is not necessarily because I know Canvas, at least the start of the Canvas power supplies came out for the previous year, kind of more toward the second half of the previous year.
Yeah.
But I feel like what they've done to me that really sort of upped the ante is I feel like they have transitioned out of boutique and kind of eh, got become more mainstream. And the reason why I say that is that they seem to have a product now that sort of addresses every vertical that there is in the industry. They've got the power supplies, they've got a tremolo, they've got multiple overdrives, they've got delays, they've got reverbs, they've got DIs, they've got, and so they sort of have a product for every space in the industry. And historically there haven't been that many companies that didn't specialize to some degree. Like Boss kind of had something for everybody. Ibanez kind of had something for everybody. And there weren't a lot of companies that were boutique that kind of entered into that space and did it well. And
Yeah.
I would say that Walrus has done a really good job of building their product line in a way where they are addressing so many things that are kind of necessary pedals that, if you were to have a wish list of kind of the breadth of things that are out there and actually be competitive in all those spaces, I think that they've done that. I think Keeley is moving toward that. And I think in some ways maybe has more of a namesake for individual pedals, but I think he was a guy that had more specialization in certain types of pedals and has sort of now expanded that out to go beyond sort of his specialization and has continued to grow as he's moved away from modifying Boss pedals and Ibanez pedals and having a few of his own pedals like the Keeley compressor, one of the best pedals in or best compressor and most popular compressor pedals of all time. and moving into having, you know, more than just the Keeley compressor, the Katana boost, the some of the pedals that don't exist anymore, like the Time Machine, the Java boost, other things of that nature. And so I think he's definitely moving into that space as well. But I think that Walrus was also on my list for that reason, in that they seem to do really quality releases. They have a lot of different products and a lot of different areas of the industry. And I think that in my mind, they're sort of elevating sort of beyond the boutique specialization and are kind of starting to get closer to competing with those really, you know, those legacy brands that have everything under the sun. So
Yeah.
I think that they've made a pretty impressive leap this year. Maybe we're sort of erring on the side of them being slightly larger companies, and as Grant said, you know, sometimes it can be intimidating, and I'm sort of taking some of your words and maybe twisting them slightly, Grant. But when you see
Twist away.
how developed their marketing is on this stuff, and you're a smaller company, you're like, God, how the heck are they affording to juggle a product line with 30 SKUs or 50 SKUs all at the same time, and they're just relegated to SKUs that are pedals? That's quite an undertaking. And I think
Yeah.
that for small companies, their best bet, I think, is to focus on products that are unique and good, and really try to do a great job with something, because all it takes is one product to break through. And
Yeah.
then you have a whole new group of people that are interested in trying your follow up. And then, you know, the onus is then on you to continue to deliver on that and sort of build the brand. Like, I feel like for Strymon, that pedal was probably the El Capistan. You know, I think that one
Hmm.
was kind of the thing that like really pushed them over the edge, and it kind of made them even bigger. And they had this really cool sort of like marketing campaign with the tapes, and then they had this cool image of like a cassette deck where all of the, you know, the tape was removed, and they had the pedal placed in there, all this stuff. Like there's usually, with most brands, you can sort of point to a singular pedal that sort of elevated them to like this next echelon. And
Yeah.
I think that Walrus was definitely there.
For sure. I also love the Fairfax delay overdrive from Strymon. I think that was surprising that like came out. Obviously, you got the because you mentioned Strymon. I think there's plenty of comments, including me, that was like, that doesn't look like an MX. Like that doesn't look like an MX timeline or Mobius, because we got that 2 years ago when I was at that last name I was at 2 years ago. They released the MX, and they were just, it was like, yeah, the hardware's done. So then you would expect it. So when like a friend of mine was like, I heard Strymon's doing another release, and I was like, ooh, that, you know, end of the year, that might be really cool to see like a MX Mobius or a timeline or something. And then it was an analog overdrive. I was like, oh, okay. Like first when I heard it was an overdrive, I was like, yeah, like there's Sunset and Riverside I never got on board with. Like I don't need a big box digital overdrive from Strymon. So wasn't like, I was like, oh, okay, whatever kind of thing. But when they said it was analog, I was like, oh, that's cool. And I'm not gonna knock it until I've actually tried it. From the videos, it sounds great. It was just surprising that they would do that, even though the market of overdrives is just so flooded right now. Personally, I feel like it's just so easy. I don't know. I can't say it's so easy to make an overdrive because I've never made a pedal, but I feel like there's just so much out there. Why are you dumping your water bottle out into the ocean, like type of thing? Like it's not, there's so much water already out there. Why fill it with more? I don't know. There's
But
just,
Strymon could make that water bottle and sell tens of thousands of units
freaking, I know
blindfolded. You
that
know what I
that's the
mean?
problem.
They can
That's the
release whatever they want, and they'll sell a
yeah,
bunch of it. I am
I
curious about the
know.
Fairfax. I haven't played it personally,
Yeah,
with it being still so new. But yeah, I'm curious about it. They also did the,
yeah,
was it the Olivera, the oil can delay?
Oliveira. Yeah,
They've done a few things this year, but yeah, everyone is waiting for the thing they did not release,
Yeah.
and I'm curious. Speaking of selling tens of thousands of units instantly, they know that they have this ace up their sleeve, or I guess a couple of aces with Timeline and Mobius. Um, yeah, so I'll be curious to see what happens when they come out. But I think the thing with the let's say it's a Timeline MX that we're all really waiting for. The thing that Eventide did with the time factor years ago, I don't know how many years ago now, over a decade and a bit, is the dual delay on every preset. And I would, if that doesn't show up on the Timeline MX, I will be very disappointed, because that's really the main feature I'm after personally. Is I want dual delays in parallel, individual control over each one.
Mhm.
That's really what I'm after in a Timeline MX, which obviously the first timeline, the standard timeline, has on a dual setting with very limited control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
You have a
I'm
little bit more
very
on the
curious to how.
dig. The dig you can get a little bit more like that, I think. Um, yeah, I wish that they had the Timeline MX, and sometimes they've done stuff like this. Like my understanding from employees that I know that are at Strymon is that the Flint, which has become one of their most successful pedals that they ever made, was
Yeah.
sort of a placeholder. Like their intention was sort of to take a few of the popular algorithms out of the blue sky and be like, we need something to sort of tie this over to our next release. We need some money in here, and so let's create some
Yeah.
modulation algorithms. Let's take sort of a top three reverb algorithm. Let's put it together in this dual pedal, and then it turned out to be this huge hit, and it was sort of
Yeah.
unintentional. I wonder whether the Fairfax is sort of a bridge to kind of some of these other things, and just kind of to stay on a release schedule.
Smart.
um, my thoughts on it are this. I did get one when it came out. I get their
Mhm.
sort of like dealer emails, so I knew it was coming out a while before. And I'm doing a video about sort of these sorts of effects that are kind of boost pedals that kind of work to help improve the sound of digital modeling devices and kind of make them a little bit more ampy. And there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It is a built product, just as you would expect from Strymon. It just to me kind of doesn't seem like, and again, this is sort of like a silly thing to say, like nobody has any authority to sort of say who should or shouldn't make anything. But I
Mhm.
think that like this is sort of not really in their wheelhouse. This is like a product that is not what they do best, and they take risks, and they do things that are sort of outside of it. But like, there's just no way that this is going to compete with somebody that's doing this sort of stuff all the time. That is really making sort
Oh,
of
for
like
sure.
these ampy sounding. Like, there's no way this is going to compete with the Benson. There's just isn't. Because this is what Benson eats, sleeps, and breathes, and
Yeah.
this kind of feels outside of their domain a little bit comparatively, and for what it commands on the open market. But again, I have no right to tell them what or what not to make. That was just sort of the first impression. If I were going to kind of give you like the unfiltered first impression that kind of went through my head, and then when I played, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is like fine, and it works exactly what you'd think, and it sounds
Yeah.
good. There's zero bad things to say about it. It just doesn't have, like so much, like it's sort of like a stupid thing that we say this, but so much of what a product does for us when we're playing it as players is like it provokes some sort of like interaction with the pedal, of vibe, and it's sort of an
Yeah. Yeah.
intangible that like certain pedals just like give you this thing that feels like the thing that it is said to evoke in you emotionally, and
Yeah.
like it's just like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it didn't have that for me. It didn't have that effect on me. Um, but that doesn't mean it won't be amazing for somebody else, and I'm not stupid enough to think that the way that my brain is wired is how somebody else's is wired. So that
Yeah.
was just kind
Yeah.
of the thing that got me on it. But I'm wondering if we could maybe finish out with any other ones that stood out to you this year, just sort of honorable mentions. We've been going for a little over an hour here, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time here as we sort of get into the holidays. Any sort of final products that you think we should mention that came out this year that we thought were really great that people might enjoy before we sign off?
We've kind of skirted around this release, but the Enzo X by Maris, in my
Hmm.
opinion, is one that is worth mentioning. I love their whole environment they've created with the LVX, Mercury X, and now the Enzo X. Kind of the a callback or a response to Timeline Big Sky Mobius, and I think they've improved on that platform. So I would, yeah, very quickly, I would say the Enzo X is absolutely worth a mention as a quite a recent release in the last couple of months, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and they also do great release or launch
Videos.
campaigns as well, as far as
Mhm.
the marketing side goes. I always enjoy watching their videos and what they put into it. But yeah, I would say the Enzo X is up there as well.
I would one thing about those, the Maris Enzo X, those ones, I would love to see them even work with RJM or these other companies to get the Enzo X and those to work through MIDI with the MIDI merge and stuff to do like their editor through the one single
Does it
USB
not? I've
cable.
never actually tested that.
I haven't tested it, but I've had five or six different people tell me it doesn't work, but it also could just be it doesn't have a merge setting, it doesn't have these certain things. So if that's a possibility and it does it, amazing. I'll try it again. I haven't been able to get to work. Mine is gonna be really quickly the GFI Solus Ventress. That one. So, or Vent that one.
Yep.
I had zero hands-on experience with it until about 2 weeks ago when I had almost four of them come through on back to back to back boards. And I will say the stock presets on them, like I was getting lost playing. And I don't sit down and play very often right now because it's just such a busy season for me and for the family and stuff that I just don't. I I play when I need to practice before I go play for a church or something. But like I actually sat here in the chair with my speakers and I had just that pedal on with the Tone X and it was on like a some type of panning delay mixed with their algorithm thing and it was doing a slight reverse. It was just like it was a stock setting and I was like this is really cool. It's a very beautiful display. I think a lot of like getting them imported has hindered more people from getting it. I know the Sanctuary had some troubles, but like the people that have it have said they love it. So, and I have to agree. I think that was a really cool pedal. So yeah.
Very cool.
Anything for you,
What about
Grant?
you, Mason?
Are you,
The Enzo X
oh,
would
the
be
intro.
my
Sorry,
Enzo.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was,
Yep.
I was,
Yep.
I was distracting, or I was distracted with trying to respond to a kid question here on the phone. I would say, yeah, I don't know that I have any outside of the ones that we've talked about or already mentioned so far. I think that again the standout for me was maybe the less popular one being the Rockman. Um, but no, I feel like overall maybe this year I think that there were some really cool things. I think that again, I think some companies are starting to sort of emerge as maybe a little bit more dominant kind of making that transition from boutique to more sort of like these legacy staple companies, like we mentioned with Walrus, kind of really elevating their stock. In my opinion, I think Kiwi is continuing to do
Yeah.
that. I think JHS has kind of stayed at a very high level already. And of course, Strymon has always been in that conversation as well. And I'm really excited to see what's going to happen for 2026. And I think that I'm sure, like many other pedal manufacturers like me, we're hoping to see that there are some sort of trade agreement in place so that we can start to really um, have something consistent that we can plan against so that when we do
Yeah.
pedal releases, we know that we can do it responsibly and we're not sort of just rolling the dice that we're going to be able to import things on the schedule that we want and we're going to be able to um, kind of get things here in a reasonable amount of time that is not going to have any surprise expenses and those sorts of things. So I'm hoping that
Yeah.
there's some more clarity there so that some of those planned releases that we can continue to move forward with. So I'm really excited for that. I just appreciate everybody for being here. For those of you that are listening on audio only, highly recommend that you subscribe over on YouTube. You write us a review, whether you're listening or you're watching. You can do that on Apple. You can do that on Spotify. Anywhere that you listen to podcasts, there invariably is a space to review. And whether it be a good or bad review, we just want an honest review, and that will help other people find us or not find us, depending on what is it you say. But that's really, really important for the sort of the survival, something that you can do for free that really helps us. Also, we have a Facebook group called Chairmen of the Boards, and that's a place where like-minded individuals, such as yourself, can confer with other like-minded individuals about pedal boards, best practices, all that sort of stuff. It's a really great community, and I love interacting with those people there. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't. You can subscribe to all of us individually as well. All of our credentials are linked in the description. And until next week, we wish you a very happy Christmas. And I guess we'll have one more episode before the end of the year. So we'll see you there the following Monday.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.